told you. Oh, nope. There you go. Sorry. Ah! They did it. Oh, Mel Tucker came in year one and beat the brakes off the Michigan Wolverines, and I cannot be any more excited than I am right now. Terrific game from Rocky Lombardi. Terrific game from the defense. They made Michigan show their ass, and you got a little bit of hype last night after Minnesota lost to Maryland, right? Yeah, when Maryland beat Minnesota last night, there was a little sliver of hope that was like, oh my God, no, maybe Michigan's win wasn't that impressive. Maybe it's something that we can do. And on this wacky, spooky Halloween night, Michigan State got it done. Mel Tucker got it done. Rocky Lombardi got it done. Ricky White got it done. Rocky to Ricky. I hope we hear a lot of that this year. But a huge victory to come in. And, I mean, not even, yeah, Paul's coming home. Let's go, Paul Bunyan, back to, where you rightfully belong and where you've been more often than not in the last few years. But, man, what a beautiful win. What just fantastic, again, all-around performance from everybody on the team. I usually have the stats and stuff pulled up. I haven't gotten that yet just because I was so excited to get on here and, talk our shit, basically. So the one stat that has jumped out to me, and it was kind of really funny all game, was Rocky Lombardi's passing numbers. Because you saw, at first he was like 2 for 5, or 4 for 5, or 4 for, let's say like 4 for 10, 4 for 11, but he had 2 touchdowns and he had a shit ton of yards. And that was kind of the play scripts, right? It was Michigan State just getting big play after big play against the Michigan defense. And then when they weren't getting big plays and they were throwing the ball downfield, which, full disclosure, I said Rocky Lombardi couldn't throw the ball downfield. He made me look stupid today, and I'm so glad he did. But every time they threw the ball downfield, it was either a penalty because they just beat Michigan cornerbacks. Michigan's quarterbacks could not hang with Michigan State's receivers. Whether it was Jaden Reed or Jalen Naylor or Ricky White, who we just mentioned, or they're actually catching the ball. And it was obviously a big step up from last week, right? They didn't have any turnovers, which is 7 less than they had last week. And they also didn't force any turnovers, which I don't know the last time in the Michigan State game where you had 0 turnovers at all. But regardless, it's what happened. Oh, I'm sorry. We got something playing on my ESPN frame. But man, what a game just from start to finish. Halftime 14-10. I was a little bit upset, I'm not going to lie to you, going into halftime, and even sometimes in the first half when I felt like Jay Johnson and Mel Tucker could have been a little bit more aggressive, and they weren't, right? They had that run call on 3rd and 15. Before the half, they tried to throw it once, it was incomplete, and then they just need out the clock to go into halftime, and, they were up 14-10, but I think they still had 2 timeouts. So you thought that conservative, maybe not you thought, I'm not going to put that on you, I thought that conservative play calling and that conservative approach, at least in those moments, might come back to bite Michigan State in the ass, and obviously it didn't because they opened up the playbook a little bit more in the second half, took more of those deep shots, and then ended up winning. Let's see what you guys have to say because I'm just so hyped up and jacked up. Here's from Jason. A hell of a game from State, otherwise for sure. I'm assuming he means Michigan played like crap because they did, but that was an incomplete pass all the way. You can cry about that all the way home, man. I don't know what to tell you. I felt like there was a play earlier when Michigan scored, I think, their first touchdown. They had that pass near the goal line, and incomplete, complete, who knows, maybe, but they got the snap off that. Hey, hats off to them, and then they punched it in for the touchdown. Didn't matter in the end. Bunch of bums from Ann Arbor. But I mean, that happens in the game of football, bro. I don't know what to tell you. Shut your mouth, clown, and get out of here, because I'm assuming you're a Michigan fan. And you just lost to a team that lost to Rutgers. So, who knows? I don't want it to be competitive, though. But, when you guys start coming in here and talking about clowns and talking about all that other stuff, then I'm obligated to throw it right back, especially after a big win. And let me tell you something. Having a coach with a loss in the rivalry couldn't be us. Right? Mel Tucker undefeated against Michigan. So, And as a matter of fact, 100% of his wins at Michigan State are against the University of Michigan. And that's probably something that you guys want to figure out moving forward. Antifa, oh, Jesus Christ. I don't even know if I want to read that. That's kind of funny, though. Michigan was favored by 24.5. Shouldn't have been that close. Yeah, they opened up as big favorites. It got bet up a little bit, probably all the way up to like 25, I think I saw. And then before the game, too, I think it got bet down to like 21.5. So people were throwing money on Michigan State. I think, again, people were definitely throwing money on Michigan State after they saw Minnesota look bad last night for the second game in a row, because that was one of the reasons that the spread was so high. Not only because Michigan State looked so bad in the first game against Rutgers, but because Michigan came out and they smashed a team that everybody thought was at least going to be pretty good in Minnesota, and then Minnesota lost last night, so it gave you a little bit of maybe not. And the loss to Rutgers is still bad because they're still a bad team. But you saw what Michigan State looked like today when they played a clean game and they didn't have any turnovers. Now, are they going to have no turnovers the rest of the games in the season? No. I'm sure you're going to get, 1, 2, 3 turnover games, but it's not going to be the extreme that you had against Rutgers, which was 7 turnovers, and you're not going to get a lot of 0 turnovers. You might. Oh, I thought he was talking to me. I was like, God damn. Congrats, Spartans, but it's going to be a horrible season for both teams. Michigan benefited from no game tape against Minnesota. No one knew their stronger QB. Can't throw anything close, accurate, over 15 yards. So I'm going to read the rest of the comment. I am going to stop right there because that was the one criticism that you could have had of Joe Milton coming in, was you knew he had this big arm. You just didn't know exactly how accurate he was going to be with it. And I didn't even think he really played too bad of a game today. There were some erratic throws, but he also had throws in the first half. And granted, Michigan didn't capitalize a lot in the first half, right? They only walked away with 10 points. But there were some throws on third downs and some throws where he just got clocked, where he still made the throw and he was able to move the chains. So I thought in that aspect, Milton actually played better than what his stats show, because I think he ended up throwing the ball like 50 times, which, as much of a speed and space offense as Michigan wants to be, that is never going to be Harbaugh's game plan to throw the ball that many times. But they had to, especially at the end. But he is 32 of 51, not a great completion percentage, just about 60% for 300 yards, and that would be the part that would be concerning if you're a Michigan fan for Joe Milton. Is 32 completions, or 50 pass attempts, I should say, should get you more than 300 yards. So you had 50 pass attempts, 300 yards. It's like 6 yards, 6-yard average a pass, and you generally want that number to be kind of way higher than what 6 is, and it's just not something that they were able to pull off today. Partly because of the defense, right? The defense played incredible. Especially Antoine Simmons. I thought the defensive backs did a really good job. Where and you saw the contrast of the two, where Michigan's defensive backs were constantly getting beat for big plays, and they were constantly holding, defensive pass interference, whatever it was. They just seemed like they couldn't keep up with the speed that the Michigan State wide receivers have. Where on the opposite end of that, I thought Michigan State's cornerbacks did a really good job defending, these Michigan wide receivers, who, to their credit, too, have a ton of speed. But that might have been the story of the game, and I think Michigan State got a lot more pressure than we saw last week against Rutgers, and their offensive line held up way better than what we saw against Rutgers. And I don't know exactly if you'd say Kwity Paye and Hutchinson were neutralized. I didn't hear a lot of Kwity Paye's name, but I thought Hutchinson, still played a pretty good game overall. But I mean, the offensive line did a great job. Not necessarily in the run blocking. I think Michigan State probably I understand why they ran the ball, because you don't want to be in a situation where you did what Michigan did and threw the ball 50 times. But their run offense is still a little bit concerning because it didn't really seem like any of their runs went anywhere. You had the big Jordan Simmons run in the first quarter, but he ended up getting chased down on that run. Other than that, you didn't get a lot of huge run plays. It was a lot of the penalties, especially in the first half, and then a few in the second half, and then just those deep shots that, again, we didn't see last week either. because our offensive line really couldn't hold up, and they weren't giving enough time to run those plays. But today, it was a world of difference from the way that Michigan State played last week for sure. And the rest of this comment, sorry. It says, so Michigan will see 9 in the box with an extra safety every week, and MSU isn't really that good at any phase. This win was for sure an upset. It was an upset. I still don't think MSU is a great team. They're probably going to be up and down for the rest of the year. But I think you can expect that with a lot of teams, honestly. Besides Ohio State, at least me personally, I feel like besides Ohio State, you're going to get a lot of these wacky and weird Big Ten scores. Today, I don't know if Clemson ended up losing, but they're in a really close game with Boston College. And I know Trevor Lawrence is out, but you still should have enough talent if you're Clemson and you've recruited insanely well these last, 5 or 6 years. Not only enough talent to win national titles, but get to the playoffs, every year. You should still have enough talent to, beat Boston College by quite a bit. And I don't know what the final score was of that game. Let me check for you guys. 28-34. So Clemson ended up winning. I think you're going to see a lot of these more wacky scores. And if you're looking for one kind of invincible team in the Big Ten, I still think that is probably going to be Ohio State. But then just the rest of the way down, it might be something where a Northwestern finishes like 2. And again, I don't really necessarily think Northwestern's any good, but they beat the smack out of Maryland last week, and we just saw Maryland beat Minnesota. So I think some of these point spreads that we're going to see aren't necessarily going to be maybe as indicative as some of the final scores that we've seen in other years. Just because we've had such long layoffs, there's probably going to be less tape. You had the Wisconsin and Nebraska game canceled today. So teams just don't know. They don't have as much information about each other, and teams have less practice time. So I know it's like a super cliche in the sport to say any team can win on any given Saturday. This year is a year where I think you'll see more of that than any other. And then he just says, congrats, Spartans fan. The biggest win either team will have this season. That's true unless they both play Ohio State. So I guess unless one of them ends up beating Ohio State, which again, I don't necessarily know that I can see, because I think they run a pretty tight ship over there just in terms of like preparation. And where we just talked about, I don't think necessarily that a lot of the other teams are going to be as well prepared. So you're going to get some of these, wacky plays or wacky scores, I should say. I think to a certain extent, more or less, Ohio State will be kind of immune to that. Rutgers is also better than people expect. They made great use of the portal. They did. And it's funny because we put these videos on YouTube after our Sports Carnage podcast YouTube, so go check those out if you haven't. But I did the Michigan State Rutgers game last week, and a lot of Rutgers fans found that video, and they were very upset with me that I wasn't giving them, their hype or their just dues they felt. I still think Rutgers is a bad team. Michigan State turned the ball over 7 times. Right, and that's not an excuse to lose the game, because there's no excuse for turning the ball over 7 times. But, I think everybody knows, and it's not some feat to beat Rutgers. But if you don't turn the ball over that many times, you probably end up winning the game. Have they started burning couches yet? I mean, maybe, right? It's probably a little bit safer now because you get to be socially distant. So you can burn the couch and then not worry about, somebody catching on fire. Brandon says, Harbaugh chokes another one up. Yeah, I didn't like, again, man, they had to throw the ball a lot more than they wanted, so I think they definitely deviated from the Harbaugh game script. But it's kind of a double-sided coin, right? Because, if you're Michigan, you don't want to throw the ball 52 times. And if you're, but if you're Michigan as well, Michigan State did a pretty good job against the running game. Not great. The only one that I thought was really, kind of able to pop off was Haskins. It seemed like every time that he touched the ball, he just ended up killing us. To the point where me, as a Michigan State fan, I'm like, please just give the ball to Chris Evans, or please give the ball to Charbonnet, because I did not want whatever Haskins had going on to affect the game. But I thought he did well, and it looks here that Milton had a better running day than I guess I remember watching, because Michigan did average 4.5 yards a carry. But I don't necessarily think that was indicative of how much success they had running the ball. It seemed like they got stuffed a lot, and their biggest run of the day was, let's see here, 19 yards was a Haskins run. So no run over 20 yards. Michigan State, it looks like they only had one. They had the Jordan Simmons one in the first quarter where he got chased down from behind. But so you don't want to pass that much, but also if the running game's not working, really what are you left to do? And Antoine Simmons made a great play on one of Michigan's passes. Actually, the only one not from Joe Milton, when Haskins in the Wildcat threw the ball, and Antoine was able to get a finger on it or get a hand on it and almost intercept it, popped it up in the air. And I think Michigan ended up setting for a field goal. They should never rank Michigan so high until after they play State. That's pretty funny. MSU played the better game, simple as that. Yeah, I mean MSU obviously played a better game than what Michigan did, and I think the biggest difference that you're going to look at is probably the penalties. And I actually think if you look at it, the penalty numbers are going to be a little bit more even than you expect in terms of yardage. Oh, well, not really. I just remember Michigan State having those personal foul penalties. They had the taunting penalty. They had two blocks in the back, and then they had a clipping penalty. And all those are 15-yard penalties, so that's 60 yards right there. But other than that, they did only have 5 penalties for 65 yards, and Michigan had 10 for 86. I knew they had a bunch of pass interferences and holdings on defense. I guess I don't remember really what else in the game they had penalty-wise, but it is what it is. But, I do think that that's going to be the story of the game is they didn't really, in the second half, I think Michigan State did a better job of, actually executing the offense. They went on that 92-yard drive to, very, very close, put the game away. They gave the ball back with Michigan with 5 minutes left or something, and they were up 10. But in the first half, I don't really feel like Michigan made Michigan State beat them. They did a lot of shooting themselves in the foot, on defense anyway, and on offense, Michigan State gets all the credit in the world there, really. But on defense, there was bailouts, whether it was pass interference calls, holding calls, again, that kept the ball moving down the field. So we talked a little bit earlier about Rocky Lombardi kind of having a weird stat line where he had 17 completed passes for 323 yards. If you compare that, Joe Milton had 32 completed passes, so almost twice as much for 300 yards, which is obviously less than 323. And it's because there was just so many big plays coming from Michigan State. And then he also had the 3 touchdowns. And, a lot of those yards came from the drive extenders that Michigan was offering them in the first half. Because of the holdings, because of the DPIs, whatever it was. But Michigan State was able to move the ball downfield, and then he's obviously able to toss it into the end zone. Harbaugh 1-5 at home versus MSU and OSU. Oh God, that's terrible. Yeah, man, that's really bad. But I mean, it's obviously a huge win for Mel Tucker. You had a lot of people calling for him and questioning the hire after last week's loss, and then this week, he's going to be a god. So kind of what a difference a week makes for Michigan State, and then the fandom of ours, which is fickle. But again, Mel Tucker, 100% of his wins at Michigan State University are against the University of Michigan. So take that for what it's worth. 1-0, never lost to Michigan in his entire career. And this is Harbaugh's this is his 3rd loss to Michigan State. So that's really what we have for you guys. I was just excited and amped up to get on here to talk to you about it. We're going to have more of this coverage on our Sports Carnage podcast. That's going to get posted probably next Wednesday or Thursday. So make sure you check that out. It's going to go up on Detroit Sports Nation. And then make sure that you guys check out our YouTube as well, which is just Sports Carnage, Twitter, Facebook. You can find it anywhere. The Facebook one is the easiest because it's right here in the description that we have on this live post. So thank you guys. Happy Halloween. Have a safe night. If you're taking your kids trick-or-treating, make sure they're safe and you're not accepting drugs in the form of candy, except nobody Nobody that does drugs is going to give out free drugs anyway, so you might not have to worry about that. And then if you don't have any kids and you're just home, put out a bowl of candy. Don't be the house that doesn't give kids the candy, because then you're going to wake up with eggshells on your home tomorrow. And then you're not going to be able to wash the lines because you're going to be busy, power washing your side panels there. But that's what we have for you guys today. Thank you so much for joining me, and go green. There's the end button.